Right, so in the previous session we have seen about implicit definitions in Fortran. Like by default, I, J, K, L, M, N are considered as integers, and any variable name starting with these 6 letters will be considered as integers, and others will be considered as real numbers. So I have seen some example also already, like how the result changes for integer division and real number division. Right? So to avoid those issues, and also the problem is you cannot avoid any spelling mistakes. Typographical errors cannot be avoided if you use that conventional implicit definitions. So to avoid that, we will be using implicit none. So let's say in the same previous program, add implicit none in the beginning. The program name, what is the name?
Program name.
So use that what are these values? 5 and 9, right? So here the output was first one is a real number division, because one of the variables is a real number. PIN is considered as, it is starting with P, so it is considered as a real number. So you will get 2.5 as output in the first stage, and for the second one it is considered as real number division. So you will get 4 as output. And in the other case, here you will get some real number because it is not defined. So you will get a real number. Some random real number will be assigned for that. So you will get some 3.28 E minus 38. Some number, you will get some random number as output. E stands for 10 powers of 10, exponent. And here it is a integer division, you will get some integer as output. Or sometimes 0 also, default, whatever. So when you don't define a variable and don't assign any value, even if then it takes a value by default. So that is a implicit statement or implicit definitions in Fortran. So to avoid such mistakes and errors, we must use implicit none. Write another program, underscore 2. Just copy paste the same thing and add one more line, implicit none. Check what are the errors that you get. So the name of the program, spaces are not allowed, hyphens are not allowed. At most, if you want to separate, underscore is only allowed. So include that implicit none and check what happens. What are the errors or warnings that you get. Okay, so remove this line as we have considered this as an error already. And here, well, you get an error obviously. Remove this line. So for variables undefined, the first error comes at here. Pin is undefined. Pin has no implicit type. That would be the first error. So this gives an error. Pin has no implicit type. That means you did not define any type of variable for pin, and you are saying don't consider anything by implicit. So the basic rule does not work. So we have to define each and every variable specifically. So by any chance, if I define min as real number, and pin as integer, so I am defining the variable that is starting with m as a real number and defining the variable starting with p as an integer. So then what happens to the output? So in this case output is, what I get? Pin is now an integer, inp is also an integer. So 5 by 2 you get 2, and 9 by 2 is now a real number division, you get 4.5 as output. So for each variable that you did not define here, it will give an error of implicit type. Whatever variable, all variables, pin has no implicit type, inp has no implicit type, min has no implicit type, inp has no implicit type, like that. So whatever variables that you did not define will be shown as errors as long as you use implicit none. So this ensures any spelling mistakes. Let's say now instead of inp, you use something else. IND, let's say. Check what happens. So let's say, you think you are using 3 variables in this program, and you are dividing variable 1 by 2 and again variable 3 by 2. That is the aim of the program. But by mistake you have typed something else over here for the second variable. So it is giving an error. So whereas here, if you did not use that implicit none, it would have considered or assigned some random number to that, and it would have gotten some result. Here it is giving an error. So that is a major advantage with that implicit none. So for any program you must use that implicit none and then define every variable. So once you define that, next comes the issue of now this real number and integer divisions that we'll see now. Let's say I'm defining the variable, and here also I'm clearly using this inp. So now I'm defining another variable, let's say real result and an integer type let's say result 1 res1 and res2. I'm defining two variables, one a real type of variable res1, another integer type of variable res2. Okay, so now I have three numbers here. So if you have any one of the variables as real number, result is a real number. That part is clear, right? So here min is a real number, so you are getting 4.5 as output, even though you are dividing with an integer. So out of those two, when you are calculating min by inp, one is real number, another is an integer, result is a real number, right? So now what I am doing here is I'll define four different types of calculations. One is res1, a real type of data, but I'll try to store an integer in it. So what I do is pin by inp. So pin by inp is an integer calculation, and I'm trying to store the result in a or as a real number. One case res2, I'm going for a real number calculation. And storing it into an integer. So min by np is a real number division. I'm storing the result into an integer, right? So next I'm going for what? So name it as 3, next program. So I'm going for a real number division and storing it into a real variable. I'm going for integer division and storing it into an integer variable. So finally, the output is 2.4, 4.5, 2. Check the difference. So this 2 point is a real number. It is 2.0. So what is actually going on? PIN by INP. Both are integers, integer division, and result is stored in a real number variable. So up to the calculation result is an integer 2. While storing, it is stored as 2.0. Right? Next one is a real number calculation. Up to the calculation result is 4.5. It is stored as an integer. So the result is 4. Next one, a real number calculation 4.5. Up to the calculation result is 4.5. It is stored as a real number. So result is 4.5. Next one, PIN by INP. It is an integer calculation stored as a
Result.
real number. Integer. Integer calculation stored as an integer. So you get 2. Check the possibility. When you are going for a real number calculation and storing it as an integer, what is happening? And when you are going for a integer calculation and storing it as a real number. So both matters. The calculation part and the storage part. And both the places you must be aware of what type of variable you are using.